Alright gang, I've wanted to make this video for a while because I've had quite a few people ask me about it, and I've just watched a lot of people at the gym who maybe have had a stall in their progress, so we just kind of wanted to I just kind of wanted to address this and kind of go over some things that I'm thinking of. So when it comes to doing this, right, there's usually three kind of forms of working out we take shape. Practice, which is doing them, intensity is very low, heart rate is very low, focus is super high, load is low. There's training, which is what we should be doing every day, and then there's competition, which we should know what a competition is. So let's kind of get into a couple things. As far as the general pop, most people in the gym, most people, if you ask them like, hey, what do you do here? Most people probably say, oh, I'm just doing training, right? This is what I'm living in. But the honest, real answer is that most people are competing. And the reason we say that is because what's the first thing people do? People come into the door, they look at the whiteboard, they see, who do I have to beat? How fast do I have to go to beat that person? That is, by definition, competing, right? The reason, and we'll kind of get into this, but the reason we want to avoid competing sometimes is because things sacrifice in order to beat that person. Maybe we kind of make the movements a little bit easier. Maybe like dumbbell snatch, for example, I put my hand on my leg to make it a little bit faster. Maybe I do some push press instead of push jerks because that's a little faster. You know, whatever the case may be. Maybe my range of motion isn't fully all the way there because my goal is to beat that person and nothing else. So let's get into some things we want to see and go over here. So the first one is practice, okay? We all know what practice is. Practice would be what we do for like our gymnastics work, right? So everything we do is at a very low heart rate if we do our gymnastic work, right? The goal should be, and the focus should be super high, heart rate super low, and the goal is to move better in these movements or get better at these movements, right? You can do the same thing with barbell work. So for example, if you were to do, empty barbell work, or we snatch from the blocks, or we do positional work like high hang or stuff like that, that should all be considered practice, right? The strength that we do beforehand, for the most part, I guess we can say is somewhat practice depending on what it is, what workout it is, right? But the heart rate is pretty low. Hopefully the load is pretty low if we're working on practice, right? If we're not PRing that day, then the goal is to move well. So we pretty much know practice, right? The problem comes in here between this training and this competition. So competition, it's pretty self-explanatory, but just so we know, intensity is max. Think of like intensity like it would be in the open, right? You're going balls to the walls, and you are probably, it could be a 20-minute workout and you're dead 5 minutes in. Like, that's how hard you're going. Heart rate is pretty freaking high. Focus is subconscious. You're not really thinking. You're just trying to survive and move. And then the load is 95% or above. And that can be like, maybe when it's competition, they ask for 1 rep maxes, or the weight is super heavy and we just have to do it because we can't scale it because we're in a competition. Whatever the case may be, you get that. So training is where we want to try to live. Now, with training, most people may think that like, oh, well, if I'm not training now and I'm doing competition, then I have to go super slow and I can't get a good workout in. That's not true at all. Intensity is still moderate to high. Heart rate is still pretty high. The focus is still high. The load is still high. The only difference is that when we're training, number one, our goal may not be to beat the person, right? Whoever that person is, okay? The focus isn't on that. The focus is on moving better, right? The loads are still heavy. We still have a high heart rate. We're just trying to improve our movement. We're trying to make the pull-ups look a little bit prettier than they do before. We're trying to run a little bit prettier than we normally would have if this was a 400-meter run for time in a competition or something like that. We're trying to snatch a little bit better if it's a squat snatch workout. We're trying to clean a little bit better if it's a clean workout. Whatever the case may be. In training, you're still trying to move quickly, but you're trying to do so moving well, right? Think of it, CrossFit talks about it, right? Mechanics, consistency, intensity. Well, what people forget is that mechanics, you do the movement well. Consistency, you do it well over and over again. And then once you get those two down and you can move well over and over and over again with the movement, then you add in some intensity. It doesn't mean you go from 0 to 100. It means you add in some intensity and you try to keep the mechanics and the consistency with that intensity. So that's where people kind of get lost. Some things I want to talk about that goes along with this, right? When it comes to practice, at some point, you are going to need to have the practice, right? Think of this as you can do pull-ups, but you can't do muscle-ups. Well, guess what? If you try to just do muscle-ups in a workout, you're never going to get them. At some point, you need to practice it. Double unders, all right? I can't do double unders in a workout. I keep trying to do them in a workout. I can't do them. At some point, you're going to need practice, which means a low heart rate, right? Focus is super high on just double unders. Nothing else, but just double unders. Think of it like they use a term like a technique tree. And what this is if you have a tree grows up, right? Well, at some point, okay, you're not going to grow up and you're going to kind of branch out like a branch. Well, branches don't grow up, branches grow out. So at some point, you're going to hit your threshold. Maybe that's snatching 135, maybe it's snatching 200, whatever the case maybe is. But at some point, technique is only going to get you so far, the technique that you have. And you're going to go out on one of those branches. In order to keep progressing and growing up, you need to focus on the technique to then get yourself to grow like a tree and not branch out. And that's where this practice comes into play. What happens to a lot of people is they get these newbie gains where you're CrossFitting for the first 6 months or whatever, and you haven't really done many snatches, haven't really done many cleans, right? So what happens? Oh, I am PRing left and right, and I'm doing awesome. Well, then at some point you hit your max, you hit your threshold, and your technique maybe it is okay, maybe it's horrible, whatever the case may be, your technique will only get you so far. And you have to focus on that technique. But what happens is people want to compete. So for example, let's take today's workout. Our strength is 8 sets of 1 squat snatch plus 1 hang power snatch. Well, if my focus is to train, then I may stay low weight and focus on my technique. I may practice it a little bit, or since it's training, I may keep the load pretty low, and I'm not going to work on 1 rep maxes. I'm not going to work on filling. I'm going to work on perfect movement with that weight. Well, if I'm trying to compete, and let's say Jeffrey over there just snatched 185 and I want to beat him, well, guess what? I'm going to throw the practice and the training out the window, and I'm going to go for a 1 rep max because I am trying to compete and beat that person. Do we understand what's going on here? So if my focus is on just practice and training, then over time I will get better because I'm in my own little zone where, hey, I need to work on, maybe it's the triple extension, the finish of that snatch, or maybe it's pulling from the ground and I need to work on the squat snatch, or maybe it's just a receiving position. So today I'm going to take it lighter, and that's going to be my main focus. But if my focus is always on competing, then what's going to happen is I may think I want to do that until I go and I look at the whiteboard and I see this Jeffrey snatching 185, and then I think, you know what, piss on it, I'm going to go for a 1 rep max today because I got to beat Jeffrey. And that's where we get into this problem of competing, and that's why people kind of stall on those gains. That's when they start to just never get PRs. They start hitting the same numbers because they're missing out on this practice and this training. They're just focused on competition. So along with that, I just wanted to, these are a couple workouts that we programmed in the past 2 or 3 weeks, and I just wanted to go over things you can do to make this more training and not competition. So people have asked me, hey, how do I get better at pull-ups? We do pull-ups and workouts. We sometimes do pull-ups for gymnastics, but I just struggle with doing pull-ups. How do I do it? Well, my advice to you, and this is what I do, and this is what I suggest everyone do, is that if you're training for the day, what we're going to do is we're going to compete. Since we don't want the competition to be low, we probably want to pick 1 day a week where I'm treating it as a competition, right? Treating it like an open workout. For example, we do the opens once a week. You do them on Fridays. That's the only time you do them. The rest of the week is kind of just normal training, and then you compete on Friday. Throughout the year, you need to pick 1 day a week where you're going to treat it like a competition. You're going to go all out. You're going to go 90% effort. You're going to go max intensity, everything you have, and you're going to try to get the fastest time. Only once a week. Treat it like an NFL team. If you look at an NFL team, what do? They practice 5-6 days out of the week, and they have a game once a week. Sunday nights they have their game, right? They don't play a football game every single day to try to lead up to that football game. That would be crazy. They work on skills, they work on drills, they work on all this kind of stuff, and then what happens is on Sunday they play their football game, and that's their competition day, and then the rest of the week is training and focus and practice. That's how we want to treat it with this, because the sport of CrossFit, or just doing CrossFit, is hard on your body just like football. Granted, if you want to compete or not, this is how you progress, right? Those football players progress year after year because they do this. They do a competition once a week. Same thing, if you want to progress, even if you don't want to compete, if you want to progress in CrossFit, you need to pick just once a week, 1 day a week where you're competing, and the rest of the day should be practice. So these are just kind of examples of how you can make these days practice. For example, number 1, we'll do the workout that we did maybe last week, the 30-20-10 of pull-ups, and you do 15 front squats. So 30 pull-ups, 15 front squats, 20, 15, 10, 15. If I'm a person, for example, and this isn't going to be my competition day, well, how can I make this a training day? Let's say I'm a person who struggles with pull-ups. Well, what can I do? My main focus for the day is to do bigger sets on the pull-ups. I want to do sets of at least 5. That's it. Or maybe it's 10. Whoever you are as a person, I want to do bigger sets for this workout. If that means you get a slower time, who cares? Because guess what the goal is? The goal is to do bigger sets on the pull-ups. That's your training for the day. It's not to get the fastest time in the world, because that would be competition, right? So that's how you can do it for 1 day. Is my main focus is to make it a pull-up day where I'm focusing on the pull-ups and nothing else. So that's one example of if we could do it. Let's take another day. There's 4 rounds of a 2-minute AMRAP, 3 power cleans at a heavy weight, 6 box jump overs, 9 ab mat sit-ups, so you rest 1 minute between the rounds. Maybe my focus for the day, if I'm a person, maybe I struggle with the barbells. I want to go a little bit heavier today, and I want to do heavy singles. If that means I get less rounds because I'm focusing on doing heavier work and catching that clean perfectly, who cares, because that's your focus for the day. Maybe we can take it a different approach, and maybe one person is like, hey, I'm going to focus on these power cleans to be heavy, and I'm going to catch each one perfectly, and I'm going to take my time with the setup, and that's what I'm going to do. Or maybe another person is like, you know what? Okay, these power cleans are a weight that I can handle, and I'm going to try to do the 3 reps touch and go because I kind of struggle with lifting heavier weight when I'm a little bit tired. So no matter what, I'm always going to do 3 reps touch and go. If that means I rest more after the power cleans or I rest more before I pick up the bar for the power cleans, who cares, because that's your goal for the day, right? It doesn't always have to be the fastest time, the best score. Let's take this 20-minute AMRAP, 400-meter run, 1 round of DT. Let's say I'm a person who struggles with running. Well, if I always run at, let's say, a 2.5-minute pace for my 400 in workouts, guess what I'm teaching my body to do? Run at a 2.5-minute pace. So maybe I can look at this workout and think, you know what? Today I'm going to work on running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to run each 400 in 2 minutes or less. That's my goal. If that means I have to rest for those round of DTs or I can't get as many rounds, I don't care, because my focus isn't to go fast on DT. My focus is to run these 400s under 2 minutes, right? Let's take this last workout, for example. 5 rounds for time, 10 toes to bar, 10 box jump overs, 100-meter run. You could treat it in a different way. Maybe I struggle with toes to bar and like, hey, I want to do the toes to bar in 2 sets or less. So I want to try to do 5 and 5 or 7 and 3 or something like that. No matter what. If I have to rest to get those toes to bar in 2 sets, I don't care, because that's my main focus. Or I can be a person like, hey, you know what, today is going to be my competition day, and I'm going to do this as fast as possible. I'm going to try to go unbroken from the start. I'm going to run fast as I can. I'm going to do these box jumpers as quick as I can. And I'm just going to try to hold on for dear life. And that's my focus for today. So hopefully what you're understanding here is that you can look at workouts. This is like throughout a 3-week span, right? But we're just giving you examples here. But I can look at a workout and go, you know what, today my focus is to do, I want to do those wall balls unbroken. I don't care if I go slower on my time, because my focus is on the wall balls, because that's what I struggle with. I struggle with wall balls. So the only way I get better at wall balls is by trying to do bigger sets for a change. If I always do the sets of 5s, then I'm always going to do sets of 5s and I'm never going to get better. So what I want to try to do is I want to try to do bigger sets on the wall balls, or I want to try to do bigger sets on pulls for the day. And that way you won't get that burnout that we sometimes get with CrossFit, where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to push hard. And that's where you can get this practice and training in, where you actually improve and progress. This can be the same thing for gymnastic work that we do beforehand. This can be the same for strength we do, whether it's clean strength, or I'm snatching, or I'm doing back squats. Maybe I want to go lighter on the back squats and work on perfect lowering reps, perfect positions, and standing up as fast as I can. Maybe that's a goal for today, making sure my mid lane stays tight. And then maybe it's a day I feel good and I want to go for a freaking PR today. We're doing a 3 rep on the back squat and I want to try to find a 3 rep max. There's a million ways you can do it, but if you understand that practice and training, if you always treat it as competition, you are probably going to stall out. And some of you may be at that stage now where you're like, well, my snatch has been the same forever. My clean has been the same forever. I can't really improve on my front squat or my back squat. They're kind of tapped out. Well, you need to look at, what are you treating each day as? Are you trying to compete each and every day? Are you trying to find a 1 rep max every single day? Are you trying to go as fast as you can every single day, regardless, and not care about movement or what you do? Are you always trying to go RX, even though that's maybe not what you should be doing because the load's too heavy for you? Or are you practicing and working on training, and are you focused on moving well with the appropriate loads for training? Are you focused on practicing the movements at a low heart rate and maybe with a lighter barbell than you think you should, and focusing on perfect reps? So this is kind of a way you can look at it to understand how you improve at CrossFit, because at some point you guys are going to need this. So if you have any questions, let us know, and have a great day.